The last decade in the NBA saw a resurgence of the sport, and that was really about the star players that started to come through. Maybe the most since the Jordan era. We had stars that fans identified with. They tuned in to watch. Ratings went up. Jersey sales, everything about the league grew in interest, and it was because of the star players. So let's break it down. Here are the top 10 players from the last decade in the NBA. At number 10, Draymond Green. I know this is kind of a surprise to people because this is not a guy with great individual numbers. I mean, he is a 3-time All-Star. And everybody else on this list, frankly, was a top 15 pick and somebody we thought pretty early on was going to be very good. Draymond Green was a second rounder who worked his way up. But the Golden State Warriors don't win those 3 titles if it's not for him. His versatility on defense made the switching Warriors defense work. That's the reason. Plus, he was key in recruiting Kevin Durant there, and that helped them win a couple titles. The Warriors aren't the Warriors without Draymond Green. They were the defining team of that decade, so he makes the list at number 10. At number 9, DWade, a guy who was honestly kind of at his peak and starting to come down past his prime at the start of this decade. But LeBron James came in, and you end up with 2 NBA titles, an 8-time All-Star, and the Heat don't win those titles without DWade as their number 2, as a threat that you had to respect on defense, as a guy who could still just get in the lane and get buckets, and every once in a while let LeBron have a night off, take over, and dominate. DWade was phenomenal at the start of this decade and was part of the reason the Heat were so good, a key reason the Heat were that good. Number 8, Anthony Davis. 6-time All-Star, the youngest player on this list at 26. He was kind of hidden down there. We didn't necessarily see a lot of him because, well, there were just not great teams in New Orleans around him. That's not a major market. Things have changed for him now. But he was phenomenal through this decade. He was racking up wins. He became one of the best two-way players on the planet. He was doing everything right. We just weren't watching enough of him because of where he was located. That's probably going to change. And frankly, he is the one guy on this list who's probably on the list for the best 10 players in the next decade, too. At number 7, Chris Paul. 7-time All-Star in this decade. And no, he didn't go deep in the playoffs, but you're talking about the highest IQ player probably on this list. Maybe one of the best point guards we've ever seen in terms of just being a floor general. He carved teams up like a surgeon. Such a smart player, so hard to play against. Racked up a lot of wins, had great seasons. It was kind of disappointing that those Lob City Clippers never quite fulfilled their potential with Blake Griffin, with DeAndre Jordan, because you thought they were right there, had some playoff stumbles, had some injuries. It's too bad because Chris Paul didn't get the recognition he deserved for winning late. We're giving it to him here because he is the best point guard of a generation. Number 6, Russell Westbrook. An absolute physical force of nature like we have rarely seen in the NBA. Won an MVP, 8-time All-Star, 2 scoring titles, back-to-back seasons averaging a triple-double. We hadn't seen that since Oscar Robertson in the 60s. We never thought we'd see it again, and there it is. Russell Westbrook taking charge after Kevin Durant leaves, committing to Oklahoma City, well, at least for a couple years, but he stayed there and he played hard and he made that an entertaining team when nobody else would, and he became must-watch television with those triple-doubles. At number 5, Kawhi Leonard. 2-time finals champion, 2-time finals MVP, 2-time defensive player of the year, 3-time All-Star, and if he'd been healthy through most of this decade, he would have been higher on this list. I mean, a self-made guy who was a force on both ends, and when he's playing well, he's as good a player as we've seen in the NBA in this decade. I mean, look, the Spurs don't win that last title. It's the Duncan era. It's the Ginobili and Parker era. But they don't win that last one without Kawhi Leonard being the best player on that team. And then, obviously, the Raptors don't win last year without Kawhi. He was phenomenal. He deserves to be high on this list at number 5. At number 4, James Harden. An MVP, a 7-time All-Star, a 2-time scoring champion, frankly on his way to a 3rd. James Harden became the best scorer we've seen in the NBA. Not with the style everybody loves. He's got the step-back 3. He draws fouls. It's a lot of isolation and not the ball movement we've come to expect from the Spurs when they won, or the Warriors, or the Heat. It's a different style, but it works. It's so crafted. It's so efficient. Not everybody enjoys watching this, but it's a thing of beauty. It's its own craft. He has really worked to become this kind of player that's unstoppable and a perfect fit for the modern NBA and the style of game. You can't knock James Harden and what he's evolved into. He just needs some playoff wins to cap all that off. At number 3, Kevin Durant. Look, 2 NBA titles, 2 NBA Finals MVPs, an MVP award, a 10-time All-Star, Every year of this decade, he was in the All-Star game. And sometimes we forget a 4-time scoring champion. Kevin Durant is one of the best pure scorers and bucket getters this game has ever seen. He can put the ball on the floor and get to the rim. He can post you up a little bit because of his size. But that 7-foot shot with a release over his head, nobody could block it. Nobody could stop it. And he was deadly with it. Yes, he took a lot of flack in the middle of this for going to the Golden State Warriors and forming a super team. But look, he won 2 titles. He got his finals MVPs. And beyond that, what do we want from our stars? We want them to cherish winning over all else. Kevin Durant did that. He gave up points. He gave up touches to go be part of a team and win. And frankly, that's what we should want from all our superstars. At number 2, Steph Curry. 3 NBA titles, 2 MVPs, no finals MVPs, which is a little bit of being robbed, 6-time All-Star. Of course, he had the scoring title, but mostly when you talk about Steph Curry, you talk about a guy who redefined the game with his shot. His ability to take pull-up jumpers or do a catch and shoot, but do them from 30 feet, from way behind the line, and pull the defense out, changed the game. His gravity, pulling the defenders towards him, opened up everything for Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and everybody else on the Warriors. He was a force of nature with that shot. He changed the way other people grew up wanting to play. You see Trae Young now. Frankly, go watch a high school game or a college game, and you see everybody trying to be Steph Curry, taking those deep threes. He has changed the game. He has changed a generation. He deserves to be number 2 on this list. He would be number 1 if it were not for LeBron James. Look, he is a clear number 1 on this list. 3 MVPs in this decade. I mean, he's got 4 total, but 3 in this decade. 3 NBA titles, 10 All-Star appearances, 8 straight finals appearances. He is a Mount Rushmore player in the NBA, one of the all-time greats, a legend who we are comparing to Michael Jordan, and we're debating about his place. We need to step back from that sometimes and just savor this. This is a guy, look, he can get to the rim at will. He's so physically strong, but he is a gifted passer. He is a great defender who can just take over games on that end of the floor with his IQ, his vision, and his willingness to attack on defense as well as offense. And he became a good shooter. You have to respect him from 3 now. You have to come out on him. All of that makes him an almost unstoppable player, and one we sometimes don't appreciate because we're just comparing him. We sometimes want to rate him more, and just stop for a minute. Just stop and savor it. We don't get to see guys like this very often. Probably since Jordan, we haven't seen a guy like this who has lived up to the hype, who has been everything we could want. Step back and enjoy that, because frankly, guys like this don't come along that often, certainly not even once in a decade, but he is clearly the best player of this decade. It's not even close.